Okay, now we're live. Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of the Environmental Answers podcast, where we're here to bring you clarity on what's what in the environmental industry. Our aim, like always, is to increase environmental intelligence, allowing you to ask the questions you need to better understand the work that we're doing. Today, we are lucky to have Crystal Dreisbach. Is that correct? How I said your last name?
Dreisbach, yep.
Dreisbach. Okay. It's really nice to have you here on the Environmental Answers podcast to answer some questions about reuse. Could you give us a little bit more information about who you are and your background and why this matters to the environmental industry?
I sure can. I have a background in public health research, but after a major turning point in my life trajectory about 15 years ago, which was all due to a single styrofoam takeout container, I ended up founding a small nonprofit called Don't Waste Durham in my hometown of Durham, North Carolina, which ended up creating the nation's first citywide reuse system for food service containers. And then it went from there, and piloting some first ever innovations like curbside collection of reusable packaging and selling it back to producers so they could refill it. 2 years ago, I was hired to lead Upstream, which is a leading change agency for the reuse movement in North America. And I'm a daughter of a Vietnamese immigrant and a traveling musician. I lived on a bus and in motels, and I was always the new kid at school. And I was parented by two people who live and think differently than the mainstream. So I use my very non-traditional lens to challenge conventional economic thinking. So I became a systems builder who's created reuse infrastructure everywhere from Durham to the Grand Canyon and now in major U.S. metropolitan areas. And I'm also part of the Global Reuse Alliance, which is 6 NGOs in Africa, Asia, and Europe who work together on a global scale.
I have goosebumps, Crystal. I'm sorry. I'm listening to you. You said that like you started something from scratch and then it has now blossomed into a movement. And how long have you been working on this work? It seems like you've done stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was 15 years ago when this epiphany hit me. You know, I was working in public health, which like loosely has something to do with this, which was I knew how to read and absorb and understand research evidence. And when I ate off of the styrofoam container for my takeout lunch, I was like, I knew vaguely that styrofoam wasn't very good for you, but I didn't know a whole lot. So I started reading all the research about it. And I realized there is enough research evidence to show we should not be using this material. Like it is giving people cancer. It is hurting people. And there's got to be a better way. And certainly someone is doing something. But I looked everywhere. And at the time, there was nothing being done to actually prevent waste or to make a meaningful change. And so I thought, well, I guess it's got to be me. So I definitely did it from scratch, all with people power. And that's a funny story too, how it all got started.
Yeah, I would love to like dive in a little bit more. You know, what I heard is that it kind of started with a question of like, why? Like, why is this the case? Like, if we know this, especially with that public health background, I really like that you've been able to like pivot and really dive in even deeper into what I think is like a purpose-driven life, like living your purpose and throughout and understanding how to like pull it all together. Cause that's what I hear. And it's very inspiring, especially I know for people who are probably trying to say like, well, can I work on environmental problems just because maybe I didn't get a traditional degree? And it sounds like you've been able to carve out a space for yourself.
I mean, I started with an undergraduate degree in German literature. So I always tell people I mentor, it does not matter what you actually study. It matters what you do. So if there is something that you want to do, start it today. You don't have to have background. You have to have passion and the ability to be resourceful. So
yeah, no, that's beautiful. Could you actually talk a little bit more about that people part and who worked with you and how that dynamic was pulling people together? I know with me and having a startup, selfishly, like getting people on alignment with an idea that you have, that must be a very like strategic process, or you know, you have to show what it is that you're doing. So I'm just curious about that pulling the people part together.
Yeah, you have to be a good communicator, and it doesn't always start out well. Like, you can try to communicate something and people are like, huh?
What are you
What are
talking
you
about?
talking about? I mean, there was a point when people were like, Crystal, you're crazy. Because I had this idea that maybe we could circulate and recirculate assets, containers that belong to the community that could be washed and sanitized and then redistributed. Just like disposable containers, but in this case, they would be reusable. And instead of being shipped in from some place like China or whatever, they would be shipped over from your local wash hub. So I submitted my idea to a magazine contest because I thought it had some value. And back then, there was nothing like this. And I won runner up in this magazine contest. So that gave me some courage. And I started like tabling on street corners, waving reusable food containers around and trying to explain to anyone who had talked to me what I was envisioning. And my pitch got better and better, because you can see what resonates with people. You can see how their eyes light up or their eyes glaze over. And soon I became pretty good at it. And I collected enough similarly crazy people. And we started meeting at the local food co-op in the seating area. And we would meet every week and we would have these action meetings. And we figured out, slowly over time how to do this. So it was really designed for the community, by the community.
Leading with heart is what I hear, is like you're leading with heart, and also you're taking the time to like gather support. And
It was pretty easy though, because look, I would say, well, I wouldn't say it was easy, but the part that was easy was tapping into people's hearts, because you can look at the global geopolitical situation and the government disintegrating and like climate change happening. You could be very overwhelmed. You could be sitting on your couch at home crying. But there was a real desire I felt for people to do something. And, people are like, oh, do something, but what does it actually mean? So I wanted to make that very concrete and just literally break the work down into bite-sized pieces that any busy person can contribute to. And they flipping loved it. I was like, okay, guys, how would we do this? And they would go, well, I think we would need to make a list of restaurants that might be interested. And I was like, okay, let's make a list. What should we make a list in? And they're like, a Google spreadsheet. And I was like, okay, who can open a spreadsheet on their laptop? And someone was like, me. And then who can help make headers for that spreadsheet? Literally the literal work that goes into making change. If you make it into bite-sized pieces and assign it to people, like it's about delegating and inspiring people to be a part of your delegation. And they were so happy because
you just gave us a formula for what I think any type of leadership, but like definitely environmental leadership, because it is overwhelming. So many things going on and so many problems. But if we can get on page one thing at a time, or even your one purpose, and break it apart. And I really like that you're like one question at a time too. Like, okay, question 1, question 2, question 3. The order and operations. I really
and also environmental stuff can be very abstract, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know exactly what carbon emissions do up there in the stratosphere. Like, who really does? Maybe super scientists do, but if you bring it down to the level of the community, people will be like, I get it now.
And this is what I can actually do. And it's tangible, making it more tangible. So could you bring us into your world now here at, I guess, Upstream, and what you're doing as the CEO?
Yes. So 2 years ago, I was hired to lead Upstream, which is about little over 20 years old as an organization. And they've always been working on policy change that helps reduce the amount of plastic in the environment, for example. But when I came on board, I brought with me my on-the-ground experience building actual infrastructure, like creating the wash facilities and the logistics and the partnerships and the relationships that got an actual system, an alternative system started. And I really wanted to support that. So at Don't Waste Durham, because we were a nonprofit reuse, basically we call ourselves a reuse service provider, when all the other reuse service providers are for profit. So once we started, they started popping up everywhere. And we didn't feel proprietary about our data or our tools. We just wanted to proliferate reuse everywhere. Not that we had the best model or something, but we thought this way people don't have to start from scratch. So we ended up teaching like almost 300 other cities and companies and activists what are the ingredients to get started. So when I moved to Upstream, the industry had matured a little bit. There's already 30 plus wash hubs all over North America now and serving large metropolitan areas. So it makes my heart sing that I, didn't have such a crazy idea after all, that this is something that has caught on. There's a need, there's a demand, there are tailwinds for this. And what I want to do now, and which is what we do, is grow and support the reuse industry. That's one of our major pillars. The other one is normalizing reuse in our everyday life. And the other one is creating the enabling policy environment. But what I really brought was the growing and supporting the reuse industry. So here's an example of what I do now in our work is we have 6 creative ways to mobilize funding for reuse infrastructure. I always go back to the infrastructure, which really just means the wash hubs and the trucks and the dishwashing machines.
The how.
Yeah, so that will make the reuse system possible. If you don't have that, you can't do anything. The problem is we're competing with what we have right now, which is trash and recycling. And trash and recycling, why are they so popular? Because the infrastructure exists. Okay. What do you roll to your curb? What do you put in the dumpster? You have trucks and landfills and facilities. Well, reuse doesn't have that yet. So what we need to do to even become the alternative supply chain is build that infrastructure. So that's why Upstream works very hard on how can we get that upfront capital to build, and then the operations can actually happen. So we're doing all kinds of very creative ways. I use my non-conventional lens on economics to figure out really first ever ideas. For example, cities, city governments have, let's say they have to spend money on something. Let's say they have to, install a new storm water management system or something like that. That's a huge expense, something they don't have to do every year, but they do have to do it one time at least. And so that budget year has a spike. So to do that, they will do a financing mechanism. Like they might issue a bond, or they might take out a loan, or they'll do something or they'll like collect fees or whatever it is to create a pot of money to then spend it on that new infrastructure. Well, those financing mechanisms have never been used, at least in the US, for reuse infrastructure. So we are helping create a municipal bond or other financing package for cities to leverage funds to grow reuse infrastructure owned by the city, which is kind of symbolic and meaningful if you think about it, because city budgets have trash and recycling in them.
Yeah.
Imagine if now you had a reuse line item, you have just transformed an entire government system.
Yeah.
And it changes the way that waste moves, materials move through our society. So those are stuff I like to talk about.
No, that's awesome. I was going to say, like you said, this is something new here in the United States. Are there other countries that already have established reuse systems that you're looking at as models? Could you name a couple that we could check out?
Yeah. So there are many reuse systems happening in the US. So it has definitely matured here over the last 10 years. But I would say Western Europe is maybe 20 years ahead of us. They have done more of the early testing, and also their laws are a lot more supportive of reuse. So over here in the US, we have to work on the innovation, but also make sure the laws are supportive. But one thing that your audience may be very interested in is Upstream got a large grant from the National Park Foundation, so private dollars, to work with $2 billion food service corporations to transform the entire Grand Canyon National Park to reusable, meaning infrastructure, new logistics, return stations all across the park, and just new processes and operations for their food service. So there will be no more food and beverage garbage whatsoever, all reusable.
That's awesome.
And that's amazing. So that would be a model for all the other national parks.
No, for all the other parks to implement that. That is like something we should like really clap about and celebrate, because that is one, like lots of dedication and energy from you and your team to be able to make this possible. A question that comes to mind is centered around, are there other places like in the triangle? I know you said you were in Durham. Is Upstream national? I see you're doing national work, but is Upstream located in multiple cities?
So Upstream is fully remote. We have 11 team members in 7 different states. So we are totally on the internet to work together, although we get together once in a while. But I think regionally to North Carolina, especially, you can look to Charlotte. Charlotte has reuse infrastructure now to accommodate reuse at 2 large sporting event venues. And that's a new development, which is really exciting. I think that if folks can go visit Charlotte and go to some of those sporting events, they will see that at least the cups to start, all the cups. Imagine how many stadium cups are used in one game, with 100 to 150 games per year. That is a lot of cups that will no longer be sent to the landfill.
No.
So a great example of reuse in this region.
I know, like, we all go to restaurants and we reuse plates and forks, and that's like standard built in. But I know before having this episode, a question that came up was about sanitary, and I was like, sanitation, I guess, like of reuse. And so I just wanted to see if you could myth bust that a little bit, especially with your public health background and helping people see that this is not something that it's so foreign.
Yeah, absolutely not at all. I mean, yes, like you said, we eat off plates and forks in restaurants all the time. When it comes to reusable takeout packaging, let's say, or Don't Waste Durham also did reusable pizza boxes, which is something that people definitely understand, because those cardboard pizza boxes are completely unwieldy, and not to mention confusing about whether you can recycle them or not. The first thing we did when those eccentric people and I got together to start designing this brand new, never before done system was to engage the county health department. And in fact, I'm giving a talk on creative partnerships and unlikely partners in order to get, innovations done. It was the best it was the best thing I ever did by accident, which is to just start inviting the public health department to our meetings very early on so that they could tell us their red flags. They would never heard of such a thing. So at first they were like, oh my God, that is terrible. We would never allow that. And I said, no, it's not about having customers bring their own containers. This is restaurants and food service having them on their shelf, stocked by a professional dishwashing service provider. And they were like, oh, we never thought of that before. I was like, if we were to do that, what would we need to do? How could we make it work? And they were like, well, we would need to do this and you would need to do that. And I said, well, do you think you could help us do those things? And they were like, sure. So they ended up helping us. We co-created the WASH protocols to align to North Carolina Food Code, which is, the statewide health code for all restaurants and food service. And the health department ended up being our strongest partner. We were inspected and permitted by them, and we always achieved 100, which is much better than most restaurants. So
yeah, I mean, we see those 90,
yeah.
97s. I don't know.
And the people employed in a wash facility they're in the business of washing dishes, and they love it. And the reputation of such an innovation is on the line if you don't do a good job. So we were above and beyond, and there were some independent tests done, and our containers were even cleaner than disposable takeout containers.
Oh no, that I mean, that's a good highlighting point. So thanks for busting that myth.
Yeah, no problem.
A question that came up also was around like what technologies are there in the reuse, thinking about like having innovation set up within this rising.
Yes, there are so many great technologies. So the first one that we invented, of course, it's matured a lot since then. We were the very first reuse system in the world to use QR codes. That was, starting back in 2017. So that was a number of years ago. And mobile checkout. It has now transformed to having robotics in the wash facilities to do quality assurance. It has evolved to use RFID, radio frequency identification, and AI, machine learning. And there are also now a lot of partnerships with groups like Toast, which is a point of sale system, Square, which is a point of sale system, and groups like MasterCard, who have made it very simple to tap your credit card to check out and pay and get your deposit back, for example. So the technologies are immense now, and the potential is very high. So we've got huge technology companies, and Avery Dennison, which is the biggest label maker in the world, making RFID tags and helping create the software that will make this possible as an everyday experience, no matter whether you're eating food or drinking a beverage, but also buying your shampoo or shipping something or getting something from Amazon. Any type of packaging can be a tracked asset in a system instead of something that you just throw away
and never have a purpose for again. No, this is down. What I was like, this is like groundbreaking, because when I think about it, just based on my lived experience of seeing this as like a broken system, like we have all these things, but it's like we use it once and then we just throw it away. Imagine if we could continue to use it. I think about like candle like containers, like I see like on TikTok and stuff, like people are reusing them, and reuse is something that people are striving for, right? And so
that's
the
it.
work that you guys are establishing is creating that infrastructure. So we're really grateful for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Another question that came up was centered around, if I'm working in like a organization and my hat is I'm a sustainability manager, and one of the goals that I have is maybe implementing reuse. Do you have any advice for me? Because right now maybe people aren't seeing that as a valuable thing to do.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Do I have advice? So if they have not put their foot into the reuse movement yet, the best number one way to do that is to join Upstream's group called the Reuse Solutions Network, the RSN. And it's existed for a while now. Upstream basically is the administrator facilitator of the entire community of practice. So folks that are just learning all the way to the ones who are implementing. It's a way to learn, share, problem solve together, learn the best practices, and it's a way to get started. So that's where I would go to the.
What is it called again? Could you say it one more time?
Yeah, it's called the Reuse Solutions Network, RSN. And you can go to upstreamsolutions.org and you can sign up for the newsletter. You sign up for the listserv, and there's one meeting a month that's highly facilitated. It's like solid gold, the learnings you can get out of that. And the listserv is also solid gold, because you can say, I'm in Cincinnati and we don't have a reuse system, and I would like to find out how to even get started. What should I do? And like 100 people will email you with advice in the first 5 minutes. It's just a great community to get your foot in the door.
Oh, that's excellent. I hope that advice helps someone. And thinking about what you just shared, a follow-up question is like, how do you, I think you said this a little bit earlier, but how do you get people at your organization to actually get in line with this thought? I think it's a part of this question. It's more of like, if you're inside, maybe that's the thing is that you're telling me to go on this website to get the listener to get feedback, but based on your experience of, I think, pulling partners together, do you have like a strategy that you could provide as well?
Yes, so it's going to be different for whatever the partner would be. And I think maybe you mean the groups that you're trying to transform out there in the world. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
I think so. I'm just trying to answer this question. Yeah.
You want your city to stop having bottled water at its city council meetings or something like that. Like, how do you approach? Yes. So each sector would be a different move. But one thing I learned in Durham is that, most people are very good people and they have the best of intentions, but they don't know stuff a lot of times. And one of the best ways, especially for city leaders, they don't have time, they don't have bandwidth, is to learn how to write a policy brief. It is a one-pager, and it doesn't have to be about policy. It's a format for getting an idea across and opening the door to a conversation. So, for example, you could say, in a letter format, even, you could say, I enjoyed coming to the last city council meeting. I noticed that you all use bottled water at your desks, and it made me think, and there's some things that maybe you don't know about it that I learned that I wanted to share, which is, here's the reasons why blah, 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 that plastic bottles aren't great. And that made me think, maybe we could have a conversation about how to change this. There's some great best practices about this. And in conclusion, I think the city council should adopt a commitment to not using single-use plastic bottles for its water. So that's essentially like the format of a policy brief or a letter for change. And so that's kind of like a foot in the door there. Also, many cities have environmental affairs boards or something like it. Those are great because you as a citizen can actually get on the agenda. So if you have an issue that maybe you and your friends or you and your college or you and your student group or whatever it is, feel strongly about and feel like action could be taken, and you have some idea of what action could be taken, you can get on the agenda for a 10-minute presentation and be able to make your, share your concern and say, we have some ideas of a way forward. How can you support us? So that's just one of the many sectors, but there are great strategies for every.
No, I mean, that was succinct and can be applied to so many places. What I also heard was using the language of the audience that you're trying to engage. So understanding what their needs are and then speaking to them where they are. Also removing blame. Like, the tone that you chose wasn't something about accusing someone of doing something incorrectly, more so an opportunity to educate and inform, which is something that we are really passionate about at the Environmental Answers podcast, because we really just want people to ask more questions, be curious, understanding that we're all growing and learning together, increasing our environmental awareness or intelligence, whichever phrase you would like to use, to get to the end point of us just growing. We're all growing, we're all learning.
And being as constructive as possible, they will take advantage of that. They'll go, yes.
Thank you.
Let's work on that. Thank you.
Yeah. You might be greeted with a strong thank you. So we normally keep the podcast to about 30 minutes and we're almost there, which I think is amazing, but crazy at the same time how much time has gone by. I just wanted to ask if you had any wisdom or thoughts you wanted to share in closing, considering the audience ranges from environmental leaders to students at the university trying to break into this work.
Yes. So advice for that, I would say, don't feel too concerned about what you're studying and how applicable it is. I think when we consider hiring, for example, at Upstream, what I'm really looking for is applied experience. And we have a very strong commitment to hiring interns. And the reason is because, when we hire, we don't want to just poach from other organizations and recirculate the same people. We want to bring up the next generation. The only way you can do that to have more people working in the reuse movement is to give them the applied experience. So once someone's an intern from Upstream and they have graduated from that, they are very hireable. So if that's one avenue, I would say you can come from a law school, a business school, a sustainability program, really any public health, any discipline is relevant. Now take your passion and apply it to something like start something in your community, get an internship. I think any single applied experience can get you in the door with a job in reuse. Because it's so new, you're not going to have like a university department specialize in circular economy. That's pretty rare right now. So just study whatever and get some darn experience.
No, that's excellent. Well, we really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey and the work you're doing, the who, what, when, where, and why it matters now. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to just say thank you to something that we had new here was that we actually had a sponsor of this episode that gave me this like little mic thing it's called the Sonic Shell. And so I had my mic in it for the first time. So I just wanted to say thank you to the Sonic Shell. We actually hit episode 13. The podcast is still 1 year old, and we really, really appreciate those who are listening in and seeing that this work really matters. Thank you again, Crystal, for your time. And if you ever have any questions, know you can email us at askenvans.org. Crystal, I did forget, if anyone wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. That might be the best. I would say you can email me, but I can't promise I can always get to it, but I could try. And that's Crystal, Crystal, at upstreamsolutions.org.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. And we look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode of the Environmental Answers podcast. Bye-bye.